The year was 870,000 AD. Humanity had been asleep for an unimaginable amount of time, tucked away in cryogenic pods aboard a massive starship called the Odyssey. The ship drifted silently through the cold void of space, its systems humming faintly as it carried the last remnants of Earth's people across the galaxy. For Ethan Carter, waking up felt like being pulled out of a deep, dreamless sleep. His eyes fluttered open to the soft glow of lights above him, and his body tingled. With pins and needles as blood began circulating again, Ethan blinked, trying to make sense of where he was. The walls around him were metallic and sleek, but they looked old, worn down by centuries or perhaps millennia of disuse. He remembered fragments of what had happened before he went to sleep. Earth was dying, consumed by pollution and war. Humanity had gambled everything on one last hope, a fleet of ships, carrying thousands of people into the stars, searching for a new home, but something had gone wrong. Something had forced them all into stasis. A voice nearby stirred Ethan from his thoughts. "Is anyone else awake?" It was Lily Monroe, her voice trembling slightly. She sat up in her pod, her dark hair sticking to her face. Her wide eyes darted around the room, taking in the unfamiliar surroundings. Like Ethan, she struggled to sit upright, her muscles stiff and uncooperative after so much time spent motionless. "I'm here," Ethan said, raising his hand weakly. His voice sounded hoarse, raspy, as if he hadn't spoken in years, which, technically, he hadn't. Slowly, he swung his legs over the edge of the pod and planted his feet on the floor. The metal was cold beneath his bare toes, sending shivers up his spine. He glanced at Lily, who was doing the same, wobbling a bit as she stood. They exchanged a glance, both silently asking the same question. What now? Around them, other pods began opening one by one. More people emerged, groggy and confused, their faces pale and drawn. There were about 50 of them in total, though. Many seemed disoriented or too weak to move. Ethan and Lily quickly realized they would need to take charge. They helped others out of their pods, offering water and food packets stored in compartments nearby. It wasn't much, but it was enough to revive some energy in the group. Once everyone was somewhat settled, Ethan turned to Lily. "Do you know what happened? Why we're awake now?" Lily shook her head. "No idea, I just remember Earth. The sky was orange, the oceans were rising, and there wasn't enough food. We thought leaving was our only chance." Her brow furrowed as she tried to piece together more details, but her memory was hazy. "Whatever woke us up must have triggered the system automatically," Ethan nodded. "We should check the control room. Maybe there's a log or something that explains what's going on." Together they led a small group toward the heart of the ship. The corridors were dimly lit and dust coated every surface. It was eerie walking through such an empty vessel, knowing that once upon a time it had been bustling with activity. As they reached the control room, Ethan pressed a button on the wall panel. With a low hum, the screens flickered to life, displaying streams of data and images. Some of the information was encrypted or corrupted, but fragments remained readable. One screen showed a map of the galaxy, dotted with blinking red markers. Another displayed text logs written by someone named Commander Harris, dated hundreds of thousands of years ago. According to the logs, the fleet had encountered catastrophic failures shortly after launch. Systems malfunctioned, engines overheated, and communication between ships broke down. In desperation, the crew decided to place everyone in stasis until repairs could be made or until help arrived, but no help ever came. And now, here they were, waking up nearly 1,000,000 years later. What does this mean? Lily whispered, staring at the screens. "Where are we? Where's Earth?" Ethan scrolled through more files, looking for answers. What he found chilled him to the bone. One document described Earth as uninhabitable due to environmental collapse. Another mentioned extinction-level events affecting multiple planets across the galaxy. The final entry was particularly unsettling. Unknown entities detected near Sol system. Origin unclear. Threat level unknown. "Something bad happened while we were asleep," Ethan said grimly. "Really bad." Before Lily could respond, another screen caught their attention. It showed live readings from external sensors indicating a nearby planet. The planet appeared to be teeming with life, its surface covered in lush greenery and shimmering oceans. Most importantly, faint signals suggested intelligent activity. Someone or something was out there. We need to investigate, Ethan said firmly. If there's anyone left who can tell us what happened, we'll find them there. Lily hesitated. What if it's dangerous? We don't even know what's waiting for us. We don't have a choice, Ethan replied. Staying here isn't an option. If we want answers and a way to survive, we have to take the risk. With little debate, the decision was made. Ethan and Lily gathered a small team, including 2 engineers named Daniel and Rachel, along with a medic named Claire. Armed with basic tools and supplies, they boarded a shuttle and prepared for descent. As the shuttle detached from the Odyssey and entered the atmosphere of the mysterious planet, everyone held their breath. The view outside the windows was breathtaking. Rolling hills stretched as far as the eye could see, dotted with trees that glowed softly under the light of a red dwarf sun. Streams of water sparkled like liquid silver, and strange creatures flitted through the air, their wings catching the sunlight. It was beautiful, but also alien. Nothing about this place reminded them of Earth. As the shuttle touched down on a grassy plain, Ethan stepped out first, followed closely by Lily. The air smelled sweet, almost floral, but there was an underlying sharpness to it, as if the planet itself was alive and watching them. The ground beneath their boots felt spongy, almost like moss, and it emitted a faint hum when they walked. This place, it doesn't feel natural, Lily murmured, scanning the horizon. No kidding, Ethan agreed. Let's keep moving. Those signals didn't come from nowhere. They set off in the direction indicated by the shuttle's scanners, keeping their weapons close at hand. After several hours of walking, they stumbled upon a clearing where the source of the signals became clear. Standing before them was a structure. Unlike anything they'd ever seen, a towering spire made of translucent material that pulsed with inner light. Around it hovered dozens of floating orbs, each emitting a soft, melodic hum, and then suddenly the orbs moved toward them. Ethan raised his weapon instinctively, but Lily grabbed his arm. Wait, she urged. They're not attacking. She was right. The orbs stopped a few feet away, hovering silently. Then, without warning, they began to glow brighter, projecting beams of light that formed intricate patterns in the air. Shapes, symbols, and images danced before their eyes, telling a story they couldn't yet understand. They're trying to communicate. Lily breathed, awe evident in her voice. Ethan lowered his weapon slowly, his mind racing. Whatever these beings were, they weren't hostile, at least. Not yet. But the fact that they existed at all meant one thing. Humanity wasn't alone. Any more. For better or worse, the journey ahead had only just begun. The glowing orbs hovered silently, their light patterns shifting and changing like a language written in the air. Ethan stood frozen, his weapon still lowered but his hand gripping it tightly. He glanced at Lily, who was staring intently at the orbs, her face a mix of wonder and concentration. She seemed to be trying to make sense of the symbols dancing before them. What do you think it means? Ethan asked quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know yet, Lily replied, her eyes never leaving the lights. But it feels deliberate, like they're trying to tell us something. The team behind them shifted uneasily, their boots sinking slightly into the spongy ground. Daniel, one of the engineers, adjusted the strap on his toolkit nervously. Rachel, the other engineer, crossed her arms over her chest, scanning the area for any signs of danger. Claire, the medic, stayed close to the group, her medical bag slung over her shoulder just in case. After a few moments, the orbs began to move again, this time forming a swirling circle around the humans. The light grew brighter, almost blinding, and then suddenly dimmed, revealing figures standing where the orbs had been. These beings were unlike anything the team had ever seen. They weren't solid like humans. Instead, their forms shimmered and pulsed with energy as if they were made of pure light. Their shapes were vaguely humanoid, with long limbs and no discernible facial features. But their presence radiated intelligence. Ethan instinctively raised his weapon again, but Lily stepped forward, holding out her hand to stop him. Wait, she said firmly. They haven't done anything to hurt us. The beings tilted their heads simultaneously, as if studying the humans. Then one of them extended what might have been an arm or perhaps just a tendril of light, and touched the ground near Ethan's feet. A ripple spread outward from the point of contact, and the grass beneath them began to glow faintly. The same symbols that had appeared earlier now formed on the ground, glowing softly in the dirt. "They're communicating," Lily said excitedly. "This is some kind of language." She knelt down, pulling a small notebook and pen from her pocket. Carefully, she began sketching the symbols, her hands moving quickly as she tried to capture every detail. Ethan watched her, unsure whether to feel relieved or uneasy. The beings didn't seem hostile, but their sheer strangeness was unnerving. "Lily, are you sure this is safe?" he asked cautiously. She looked up at him, her expression serious. "We don't have much of a choice. If we want answers about where we are and why Earth isn't here anymore, we need to figure out how to talk to them." Ethan sighed but nodded reluctantly. He turned to the rest of the team. "Stay alert," he said. "If anything changes, let me know immediately." As Lily continued sketching, the beings remained motionless, watching her with what could only be described as curiosity. After several minutes, one of them moved closer, its form flickering slightly as it approached. It stopped just a few feet away from Lily and extended another tendril of light toward her notebook. For a moment, Ethan thought it might try to take it, but instead, the being simply hovered there, as if examining her work. Then, without warning, the being emitted a low and the symbols on the ground began to shift and rearrange themselves. Lily gasped, recognizing that the new arrangement matched one of the sketches she had just drawn. She flipped through her notebook frantically, comparing the glowing symbols to her notes. Her eyes widened as realization dawned. "They understand," she whispered, looking up at Ethan. "They can read what I've written." Ethan frowned, confused. "How is that possible? You just started drawing random lines." "They're not random," Lily explained. "These symbols, they're part of a pattern. It's like math, or maybe music, something universal." Encouraged by this breakthrough, Lily began experimenting. She sketched more symbols in her notebook and held them up for the beings to see. Each time, the beings responded by rearranging the glowing patterns on the ground, confirming or correcting her interpretations. Slowly, painfully, communication began to take shape. It wasn't easy. The beings' language was complex, layered with meanings that went beyond simple words. But after hours of trial and error, Lily managed to piece together a basic exchange. She learned that the beings called themselves the Luminaris, and they were the guardians of this planet. They had existed for countless millennia, long before humanity had even left Earth. When Lily asked about Earth, however, the Luminaris hesitated. Their light dimmed slightly, and the symbols on the ground became jagged and chaotic. It was clear that whatever happened to Earth and the rest of the galaxy was deeply troubling to them. "They're not telling us everything," Ethan observed, watching the Luminaris closely. "Something's bothering them." Lily nodded. "I think they're afraid, whatever destroyed Earth, it might still be out there." The thought sent a chill down everyone's spines. The team exchanged worried glances, wondering what kind of threat could terrify beings as powerful as the Luminaris. Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon, scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. So far the planet seemed peaceful, but appearances could be deceiving. Despite the ominous undertones, the Luminaris agreed to guide the humans to a nearby settlement. As they walked, the shimmering beings led the way, their forms casting soft, ethereal light onto the path ahead. The journey took them through dense forests filled with bioluminescent plants and past rivers that sparkled like liquid diamonds. The beauty of the planet was undeniable, but it also felt alien and surreal, as though they had stepped into a dream. When they finally reached the settlement, the humans were awestruck. The Luminaris' homes were unlike anything they had ever seen, towering structures made of translucent material that seemed to grow directly out of the ground. The buildings pulsed gently with inner light, blending seamlessly with the natural environment. Inside, the walls displayed moving images of the planet's history, showing scenes of destruction and renewal that span millions of years. This place, it's incredible, Daniel murmured, running his hand along the smooth surface of one of the structures. How do they build things like this? It's not building, Lily corrected. It's growing. Everything here is alive in a way, connected. The Luminaris invited the humans to sit in a large circular chamber at the center of the settlement. As they settled in, the beings began projecting images into the air above them. Through these projections, Lily and the others learned about the cycles of creation and destruction that had shaped the galaxy. They saw civilizations rise and fall, wars waged over resources, and entire planets consumed by disasters both natural and man-made. One image in particular caught Lily's attention. It showed a star system surrounded by swirling clouds of dark matter. At its center was a massive explosion, followed by waves of devastation spreading outward. The caption below the image was written in the Luminaris glowing script, but Lily recognized enough of it to translate. "That's Sol System," she whispered, her voice trembling. "That's Earth," Eaton exchanged a grim look with her. "What caused it?" he asked. Before Lily could respond, the Luminaris projected another image, a human figure holding a device that emitted a dark, pulsating energy. The caption read, "Hubris." "They're saying we did this," Lily said, her heart sinking. "Our experiments with dark matter, it triggered something catastrophic." The revelation hit the team like a punch to the gut. Humanity had always prided itself on its ingenuity, its ability to conquer challenges and push boundaries. But now, faced with the consequences of those actions, they couldn't help but feel ashamed. As the presentation ended, the Luminaris turned their attention back to the humans. Their lights dimmed slightly, conveying sadness or perhaps pity. One of them extended a tenderness of light toward Lily, as if offering comfort. She reached out hesitantly, letting the tenderness brush against her fingers. It felt warm, almost alive, and for a brief moment she sensed a flood of emotions: regret, hope, determination. "We need to learn more," she said softly, turning to Ethan. "If we're going to survive, if we're going to fix what we broke, we have to understand." "What happened?" Ethan nodded, though his expression remained troubled. "Okay," he said, "but we tread carefully. This planet, these beings, they're not like anything we've ever encountered. We can't afford to make mistakes." The Luminaris seemed to agree. As they escorted the humans back to their shuttle, their lights flickered briefly, forming a final message in the air: "Proceed with caution." As the team climbed aboard the shuttle and prepared for takeoff, Lily stared out the window at the glowing landscape below. The Luminaris stood watching them, their forms fading into the distance as the shuttle ascended. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being given a second chance, a fragile opportunity to redeem humanity's past mistakes, but redemption wouldn't come easily. The scars left behind by humanity's hubris ran deep, and the galaxy would never fully heal. Still, as the shuttle reconnected with the Odyssey orbiting high above, Lily allowed herself a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to make things right. For now, that was enough. Back aboard the Odyssey, Ethan and Lily gathered the crew in the main chamber to share what they had learned from the Luminaris. The room was dimly lit, with faint blue lights casting shadows on the walls. Everyone sat or stood in silence, their faces tense as they waited for an explanation. Ethan stood at the front, his arms crossed, while Lily held her notebook tightly, her knuckles white. "We've made contact with intelligent life," Ethan began, his voice steady but heavy. "They call themselves the Luminaris. They're different, not like us, but they know about Earth." Lily stepped forward, opening her notebook to show the sketches she had made of the glowing symbols. "They told us, showed us that humanity's experiments with dark matter caused a chain reaction. It destabilized entire star systems, including ours." Her voice cracked slightly as she added, "Earth is gone, destroyed." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some people looked down at their hands, others exchanged worried glances. Daniel, one of the engineers, raised his hand hesitantly. "Are you saying we did this?" "That we destroyed our own planet?" "Yes," Lily sighed quietly. And not just Earth, the Luminaris showed us images of other planets affected by the same disaster. Entire civilizations wiped out. Ethan took over, pacing slowly. But there's more. The Luminaris warned us about something else, a threat that's still out there. They didn't give us details, but it's clear they're afraid of it. Whatever it is, it might have been connected to the destruction of Earth. The weight of his words settled over the group like a thick fog. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Rachel, the other engineer, broke the silence. What do we do now? If this thing is still out there, shouldn't we leave? Find somewhere safer? We can't run, Ethan replied firmly. Not until we understand what we're dealing with. The Luminaris are willing to help, but they're also scared. That means whatever's out there is dangerous and possibly coming back. Lily nodded in agreement. We need to investigate. Further, the Luminaris mentioned ruins buried beneath the planet's surface. They avoided giving specifics, but I think those ruins might hold answers. Answers to what? Claire, the medic, asked nervously. How to fix what we broke? Or how to survive whatever's hunting us? Both, Lily said. If we want any chance at rebuilding, we need to know what happened. And if we're going to protect ourselves, we need to understand the enemy. Despite the uncertainty, the decision was made. Ethan and Lily would lead a small team back to the planet's surface to explore the ruins. Alongside them would be Daniel, Rachel, and Claire, each bringing their unique skills to the mission. As they prepared for departure, tensions ran high. No one knew what awaited them below or whether they'd return at all. When the shuttle touched down near the Luminaris settlement, the shimmering beings were already waiting. Their forms flickered anxiously and their light seemed dimmer than before. One of them approached Lily, extending a tendril of energy toward her notebook. She quickly sketched a question. Asterisk, where are the ruins? Asterisk, the Luminaris responded by projecting a map into the air. It showed the glowing spire where the humans had first landed, along with a network of tunnels leading deep underground. The symbols accompanying the map translated roughly to danger. Ethan frowned. Turning to the teen, they're warning us again, he said. Whatever's down there, it's not safe. But we don't have a choice, Lily reminded him. We need answers. The Luminaris guided them to the entrance of the tunnels, which appeared as a jagged crack in the ground hidden behind. A cluster of glowing plants. The air smelled metallic here, and the hum of the planet seemed louder, almost oppressive. As they descended, the walls of the tunnel glowed faintly, revealing carvings etched into the stone. The designs were intricate, depicting scenes of war, destruction, and despair. This place feels wrong, Rachel muttered, running her fingers along the carvings. Like it's alive, but angry. Stay focused, Ethan said sharply. He led the way, his weapon drawn. Though he wasn't sure how effective it would be against whatever might lie ahead, the deeper they went, the colder it became. The glowing patterns on the walls grew darker, shifting from soft blues and greens to harsh reds and blacks. Strange noises echoed through the tunnel's low rumbles, sharp cracks and whispers that sounded almost human. Claire clutched her medical bag tightly, her eyes darting around nervously. Finally, they reached a large chamber at the heart of the ruins. The room was dominated by a massive structure resembling a machine, its surface covered in familiar symbols. In the center was a pedestal holding a crystalline shard that pulsed with unnatural energy. The shard's glow cast eerie shadows on the walls, making the carvings seem to move. What is that thing? Daniel whispered, stepping closer. I don't know, Lily admitted, her voice barely audible. But it's important. Look at the carvings. They're telling a story. She pointed to a series of panels lining the walls. Each panel depicted a sequence of events, humans experimenting with dark matter, the resulting explosion, and then something emerging from the chaos, a monstrous, shadowy figure with countless eyes and tendrils. Beneath the figure were smaller images of planets being consumed, their surfaces turning black and lifeless. That's what destroyed Earth, Ethan said grimly. Whatever that thing is, it's responsible. As they studied the carvings, the shard began to emit a low hum, growing louder by the second. The temperature in the room dropped sharply, and frost formed on the walls. Claire shivered, wrapping her arms around herself. "Something's happening," she said, her voice trembling. Suddenly the hum turned into a deafening roar, and the shard shot out beams of dark energy. The team stumbled backward, shielding their eyes from the blinding light. When the noise subsided, they found themselves surrounded by swirling shadows that twisted and writhed like living things. The carvings on the walls glowed brighter, their images shifting to show the shadowy figure advancing toward them. "We need to get out of here," Ethan shouted, grabbing Lily's arm, but before they could move, one of the shadows lunged at Daniel, wrapping itself around his leg. He cried out in pain as the shadow seared his skin, leaving behind burns shaped like the symbols from the walls. Rachel rushed to help him, pulling out a tool from her belt and using its heat function to drive the shadow away. "This isn't natural," Rachel yelled over the chaos. "It's attacking us!" "Keep moving," Ethan ordered, leading the group toward the exit. The shadows followed relentlessly, forcing them to fight their way through the tunnel. Every step felt heavier, as if the very air was trying to hold them back. Claire tripped and fell, her medical bag spilling open. Ethan helped her up, grabbing only a few essentials before urging her onward. By the time they reached the surface, the team was exhausted and shaken. The Luminaris were waiting for them, their light flickering erratically. One of them extended a tendril toward Daniel's burned leg, emitting a soothing warmth that eased his pain. Another projected a message into the air. "Asterisk, you have awakened." "The rift spawn, asterisk, the rift spawn?" Lily repeated, her mind racing. "Is that what attacked us?" The Luminaris responded with another projection. "Asterisk, born of your hubris. Feeds on chaos. Consumes all, asterisk." Ethan clenched his fists, anger mixing with fear. "So it's our fault again. We created this monster. And now it knows we're here," Lily added, her voice hollow. "That shard, it must have been calling to it." The Luminaris light dimmed further, conveying a sense of urgency. They gestured toward the shuttle, urging the humans to leave immediately. But Lily hesitated, looking back at the entrance to the ruins. "We can't just abandon this," she said. "If we don't understand how to stop the rift spawn, it'll keep destroying everything. We don't even know where to start," Ethan argued. "Staying here will only put us and the Luminaris in more danger." Lily wanted to argue, but she saw the truth in his words. Reluctantly, she nodded and followed the others onto the shuttle. As they lifted off, the Luminaris watched them go, their forms fading into the distance. The last thing Lily saw before the planet disappeared from view was the glowing spire, its light pulsating faintly as if warning them of what was to come. Back aboard the Odyssey, the team debriefed the rest of the crew. The mood was somber, the weight of their discovery pressing down on everyone. Ethan paced the room, his mind racing with possibilities. "We can't fight something like that," he said finally. "Not yet. We need more information." "But where do we find it?" Rachel asked. "Everything we've seen so far points to one conclusion. Humanity screwed up big time." "How do we fix something like that?" "We don't," Lily said softly. "Not completely, but maybe we can contain it. Stop it from spreading." Ethan looked at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. "Then we focus on that. First, we figure out what the shard does. Second, we find out if there's any way to use it against the rift spawn." Daniel raised a hand cautiously. "What if the shard makes things worse? What if it calls the rift spawn to us?" "It's a risk we have to take," Lily said firmly. "Because doing nothing guarantees destruction?" As the meeting ended, the crew dispersed, each lost in their thoughts. Ethan stayed behind, staring out a viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, the rift spawn lurked, waiting, and somewhere within him, a spark of defiance ignited. Humanity had made mistakes, terrible ones, but they weren't done yet. For better or worse, the fight was only beginning. The shard sat in the center of the lab aboard the Odyssey, its dark energy pulsing faintly. Ethan stared at it, his arms crossed as he tried to make sense of what they were dealing with. The crystalline object was both beautiful and terrifying. Its surface shimmered like liquid glass, but its core seemed to swirl with shadows that moved unnaturally. It was as if the shard wasn't just an object. It was alive, watching them, Lily stood nearby, poring over notes she had taken during their trip to the ruins. Her face was pale, her eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. She hadn't left the lab since they returned, determined to uncover the shard's secrets. "It's a fragment," she said suddenly, breaking the silence. "A piece of something bigger." Ethan turned to her. "Bigger? You mean the rift spawn?" She nodded, flipping through pages of sketches and translations. The carvings showed the rift spawn forming after the explosion caused by humanity's experiments. This shard, it's part of it. Maybe even a remnant of its creation. Daniel, who had been examining the shard under a microscope, looked up sharply. "If it's connected to the rift spawn, we need to be careful. We don't know what kind of effect messing with it might have," Rachel sighed, leaning against the wall. "Careful isn't going to save us. That thing is out there, and it knows we're here. If we don't figure out how to stop it, none of this matters." Ethan agreed. "We need answers and fast. But we can't risk triggering another attack." For days, the team worked tirelessly, studying the shard from every angle. They ran tests, exposed it to different wavelengths of light, and even attempted to scan its internal structure using modified medical equipment. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. The shard responded to certain frequencies, emitting bursts of energy when stimulated correctly. More importantly, it seemed to resonate with specific symbols, the same ones etched into the walls of the ruins. "It's communicating," Lily realized one evening, her voice filled with awe. "Not directly, but through these reactions. It's showing us how it works." "What does that mean?" Claire asked, standing nervously near the door. Since their encounter underground, she had avoided getting too close to the shard, her instincts telling her it was dangerous. "It means we might be able to control it," Ethan said cautiously. "If we can replicate the right sequence of symbols and frequencies, we could amplify its power or contain it." "But which one?" Rachel interjected. "Control or containment? Because if we get it wrong, we'll destroy ourselves," Daniel finished grimly. Despite the risks, Ethan decided they had no choice but to proceed. He instructed the team to build a device capable of amplifying the shard's energy, hoping it could serve as both a weapon and a tool for communication. Working around the clock, they pieced together components scavenged from the ship's systems, creating a crude but functional apparatus. By the time it was completed, everyone was exhausted but hopeful. Meanwhile, tensions aboard the Odyssey grew. News of the shard and the rift spawn spread quickly among the crew, sparking debates about what to do next. Some argued they should abandon the shard entirely and flee the planet, while others believed they had a responsibility to confront the threat head-on. A few even suggested harnessing the shard's power to reclaim Earth's former dominance. Regardless of the consequences, one night, Ethan found himself cornered by a group of dissenters led by a man named Sam Grayson, a former soldier who had grown increasingly vocal about taking drastic action. "You're wasting time," Sam said, his tone sharp. "That shard is our only chance to fight back. Why are you holding back?" "Because rushing in blind will get us killed," Ethan replied firmly. "We don't understand what we're dealing with yet. If we push too hard, we could unleash something worse than the rift spawn." Sam sneered. "Worse? What could possibly be worse than extinction? At least give us a fighting chance." Ethan clenched his fists, resisting the urge to argue further. Instead, he walked away, knowing Sam wouldn't listen. As he returned to the lab, he couldn't shake the feeling that the crew was fracturing under the pressure. The weight of leadership pressed heavily on him, but he knew giving in to fear or anger would only make things worse. Back in the lab, Lily made a breakthrough. She discovered that the shard's energy could be channeled into a feedback loop, amplifying its output exponentially. However, doing so required precise timing and coordination, a task easier said than done. "If we trigger the loop incorrectly," she warned, "it could overload and destabilize the entire ship." "Then we practice until we get it right," Ethan said resolutely. "We don't have any other options." The team rehearsed tirelessly, simulating the process over and over until they could execute it flawlessly. Even then, doubts lingered. None of them knew whether the amplified energy would actually harm the rift spawn or attract it instead. Their fears were confirmed sooner than expected. During one test run, The shard emitted a sudden burst of energy that rippled outward, disrupting the ship's sensors. Moments later, alarms blared throughout the Odyssey. "Something's approaching," Daniel shouted, checking the monitors. "Fast!" Ethan rushed to the viewport, his heart sinking as he saw a massive shadow blotting out the stars, twisting and writhing like smoke given form. The rift spawn had arrived. Panic erupted across the ship as people scrambled to prepare for the worst. Ethan barked orders, directing the crew to secure critical areas and prepare defensive measures, though he doubted anything short of a miracle would stop the creature. Turning to Lily, he said, "We need to activate the device now. It's our only shot." Lily hesitated, her hands trembling as she placed them on the controls. "What if it doesn't work? What if we make it stronger?" "We'll never know." "Unless we try," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "Trust me." With a deep breath, Lily initiated the sequence. The shard began to glow brighter, its energy feeding into the device. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the ship's hull. Outside, the rift spawn slowed its advance, seemingly drawn to the surge of power emanating from the Odyssey. For a moment, it felt like they had the upper hand. Then everything went wrong. The shard's energy spiked uncontrollably, causing the device to overload. Sparks flew, and the lights flickered wildly. One of the cables snapped loose, whipping through the air like a live snake. Before anyone could react, it struck Claire, knocking her unconscious. Ethan grabbed her and dragged her to safety, shouting for the others to shut down the system, but it was too late. The rift spawn surged forward, engulfing the ship in darkness. Its tendrils lashed out, tearing through the outer hull and breaching the interior. Chaos reigned as people screamed and fled, trying to escape the encroaching shadows in the midst of the destruction. Ethan spotted Sam Grayson sprinting toward the lab, his face twisted with rage. "You did this!" Sam yelled, pointing at Ethan. "This is your fault." Before Ethan could respond, Sam lunged at him, tackling him to the ground. They struggled briefly, but Ethan managed to throw him off. "Get out of here," Ethan roared. "Save yourself." Sam hesitated, his anger wavering as he glanced at the advancing rift spawn. Finally, he turned and ran, disappearing into the crowd. As the situation spiraled out of control, Ethan realized they needed a new plan and fast. Grabbing the shard, he shouted to Lily, "We have to take this outside. Maybe we can draw the rift spawn away from the ship." Lily nodded, grabbing a portable console linked to the device. Together they fought their way to an escape pod, dodging debris and shadowy tendrils along the way. Once inside, they launched themselves toward the planet's surface, the rift spawn hot on their heels. When they landed, Ethan and Lily wasted no time setting up the device again. The shard's energy flared brightly, drawing the rift spawn closer. It loomed above them, its many eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. Ethan activated the final sequence, praying it would work. The shard pulsed violently, releasing a blinding wave of energy that washed over the rift spawn. For a moment, it seemed to weaken, its form flickering like a dying flame. But then it retaliated, sending a shockwave that knocked Ethan off his feet. Lily helped him up, her voice shaking. "It's not enough. We need more power." "There is no more power," Ethan shouted back. "We've got one last shot." Before he could finish, the rift spawn unleashed a torrent of dark energy, engulfing the area in shadow. Ethan shielded Lily with his body, bracing for the end, but the end didn't come. Instead, a bright light erupted from the horizon, accompanied by a deafening roar. The Luminaris had arrived, their forms blazing with radiant energy. They surrounded the rift spawn, attacking it with beams of light that cut through its shadowy mass. "They're helping us," Lily whispered, tears streaming down her face. Ethan watched in awe as the battle raged on. The Luminaris fought valiantly, but the rift spawn was relentless, regenerating faster than they could damage it. Realizing the shard was still active, Ethan made a decision. "I'm staying," he told Lily. "I'll hold it here while you get back to the ship." "No," Lily protested, grabbing his arm. "You can't." "I have to," Ethan interrupted. Gently. "Someone has to stay behind and make sure this works. Go, tell the others what happened." Reluctantly, Lily obeyed, running toward the shuttle as Ethan adjusted the controls. With a final glance at her retreating figure, he activated the device one last time. The shard exploded in a burst of light, consuming both Ethan and TH. The shuttle carrying Lily Monroe landed softly aboard the Odyssey, its engines humming faintly as the hatch opened. She stepped out slowly, her face pale and streaked with tears. Her hands trembled as she clutched the small console linked to the device that had saved them, or at least bought them time. The crew gathered around her, their faces etched with worry and exhaustion. They didn't need to ask what had happened. The answer was written in her expression. "He's gone," she said quietly, her voice cracking. Ethan stayed behind to make sure the shard worked. A heavy silence fell over the group. Some looked away, unable to meet her eyes, while others bowed their heads in respect. Ethan Carter had been a leader, a problem solver, and someone who always put others first. His sacrifice weighed heavily on everyone, but none more than Lily. She had argued with him until the last moment, begging him to come back with her. But he had insisted, his tone calm yet unyielding. Someone had to stay behind, and he had chosen himself. As the crew dispersed, returning to their tasks or seeking solace in quiet corners of the ship, Lily remained in the docking bay, staring at the console in her hands. It was all that remained of Ethan, now the final piece of evidence of his bravery. She thought about smashing it, throwing it into the void of space, anything to erase the memory of what she had witnessed. But deep down, she knew she couldn't. This device, this shard, was proof that humanity still had a fragile, fleeting chance to fix its mistakes. Hours later, Lily stood on the bridge of the Odyssey, gazing out at the stars through the viewport. The planet below shimmered faintly, its surface glowing under the light of the red dwarf sun. The Luminaris were still there, their forms flickering like distant fireflies. She wondered how much energy they had expended fighting the rift spawn, how much of themselves they had sacrificed to protect strangers from another time. "They're amazing," Claire said softly, appearing beside her. "I don't think we'll ever fully understand them," Lily nodded. "They gave us a second chance. We can't waste it." Claire hesitated before speaking again. "What do we do now? Where do we go?" Lily turned to her, her eyes filled with determination. "We find a new home. Somewhere far from here, where we can start over without causing more harm. But first we need to learn. We need to understand everything we can about the rift spawn, about Earth's destruction, about ourselves. We can't repeat the same mistakes." Claire offered a small smile. "You sound like you already have a plan." "I don't," Lily admitted. "But I know one thing for sure. We owe it to Ethan and to everyone else who's died because of our hubris to try." Over the next few days, the crew worked together to repair the damage caused by the rift spawn's attack. The ship's hull bore scars that would never fully heal, just like the galaxy itself. But beneath the surface, something had shifted. The fear and division that had plagued them before were replaced by a shared sense of purpose. Ethan's sacrifice had reminded them of what truly mattered, not survival alone, but survival with meaning. Sam Grayson approached Lily one evening as she sat alone in the lab, reviewing data from the shard's final activation. He looked different, somehow less angry, more subdued. "I wanted to say, I'm sorry," he began awkwardly. "For everything I said before. I was wrong." Lily looked up at him, surprised. "It's okay," she replied after a moment. "We were all scared. That doesn't excuse what happened, but we're human. We make mistakes." Sam nodded, his jaw tightening as if holding back emotion. "He did the right thing," he said finally. "Ethan, he saved us all." "Yes, he did," Lily agreed softly. "And now it's up to us to honor that." Sam lingered for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. Watching him leave, Lily felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity could change. Not overnight, not easily, but step by step. Weeks passed, and the Odyssey set course for a distant star system identified by the Luminaris as safe and habitable. Along the way, Lily spent countless hours studying the data collected during their encounter with the rift spawn. She pieced together fragments of information, searching for clues about how to prevent such disasters in the future. With Rachel's help, she developed protocols for detecting and containing dark matter anomalies, ensuring that humanity would never again unleash something so destructive. Daniel and Claire worked together to establish guidelines for interacting with alien life forms, drawing inspiration from the Luminaris' wisdom. They emphasized caution, respect, and humility, qualities humanity had sorely lacked in the past. Slowly but surely, the crew began transforming the Odyssey into more than just a ship. It became a symbol of renewal, a vessel carrying the promise of a better tomorrow. When they finally arrived at their destination, a lush, vibrant planet orbiting a yellow sun, the crew gathered on the observation deck to watch the descent. The planet's surface was covered in rolling hills, dense forests, and sparkling rivers. It was beautiful, untouched, and full of potential. As the shuttle touched down, Lily stepped out first, taking a deep breath of fresh air. It smelled clean, pure, unlike anything she had experienced since waking up nearly 1,000,000 years ago. "This is it," she said, turning to the others. "Our new beginning?" The crew cheered, their voices echoing across the landscape. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was laughter, genuine and heartfelt. Children ran ahead, marveling at the strange plants and animals, while adults began setting up temporary shelters. Everyone worked together, united by a common goal, to build something lasting, something good. Lily walked a short distance from the group, finding a quiet spot overlooking a wide river. She knelt down, placing her hand on the soft grass. Closing her eyes, she whispered a silent thank you to Ethan, to the Luminaris, and to the universe for giving them another chance. As she stood up, she noticed a faint glow in the sky. Looking closer, she realized it was the Luminaris, watching from afar. They didn't approach, didn't interfere, they simply observed, their presence a reminder of the responsibility humanity now carried. Lily raised her hand in a gesture of gratitude, and the Luminaris responded by dimming their lights briefly, almost like a nod. Turning back toward the settlement, Lily took a deep breath. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, setbacks, and moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful. Humanity had woken up in 870,000 AD, and though the galaxy would never fully heal from the wounds of the past, it wasn't too late to start making amends. With renewed determination, Lily joined her fellow survivors, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Together, they would forge a new path, not as conquerors or destroyers, but as stewards of a fragile, beautiful cosmos. And perhaps in time, they would prove worthy of the second chance they had been given.